All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're stepping back in time, way back, to the 8th century to get inside the mind of a true architect of ideas, a man named John of Damascus. Now, this guy didn't just write about faith. Oh, no. He constructed an entire logical universe, a complete system for understanding God, the cosmos, and our own place in the whole shebang. So let's take a look at his blueprint.
And this is where he starts, with this incredibly powerful idea. For John of Damascus, the journey to God wasn't some leap in the dark. It was a journey lit up by the mind. He was convinced that knowledge wasn't just, a nice to have. It was the very essence, the light of what it means to be human.
So first things first, the foundation. You can't build anything without your tools, right? For John, the essential tools for building a worldview weren't faith or reason. They were faith and reason, working together like partners.
And he really took this idea seriously. He saw ignorance as a literal darkness, a kind of black hole in the soul. He even argued that a person who has the ability to know but chooses not to is actually in a worse position than an animal that doesn't have reason at all. I mean, that's a pretty strong call to use the minds we were given.
He thought of philosophy as the art of arts, the master skill behind everything else. But for John, that was just the starting point. The ultimate philosophical quest, the highest possible love of wisdom, was the love of God. He truly believed that all intellectual roads, if you follow them far enough, eventually lead to the divine.
Okay, so we've got our tools ready, reason and philosophy. Now we can start looking at the divine blueprint for the universe itself. And where do you start with a blueprint? Well, with the architect, God. And right away, we hit the central challenge. This is the big puzzle. If God is fundamentally beyond our ability to understand, beyond even existence as we know it, where do you even begin? How can reason get a foothold? John's answer is just brilliant. He says, don't start by looking up into the unknowable void. Start by looking around at the world that was created.
He starts with pure, clean logic, borrowing a bit from Aristotle. Just think about it for a second. A ball rolls because someone kicked it. The foot kicked because a leg moved. The leg moved because of a signal from the brain. You can keep tracing that chain of what caused that backwards and backwards, but it can't go on forever, right? Logically, at some point, there has to be an initial source of all that movement that wasn't moved by anything else. And that unmoved mover, he concludes, is God.
And once you accept that one logical point, a whole bunch of other things just have to be true. If something is created, it can be changed. So the first mover has to be uncreated and unchanging, immutable. It can't be a physical thing because all physical things are moved. It has to be perfect. And to avoid the total chaos of multiple cosmic forces, it has to be one. See how it all just flows from that first observation?
And from this single perfect source, you get this perfectly ordered universe. It's really a beautiful hierarchical design. At the very top, you've got angels, which he describes as this kind of immaterial fire, just pure intellect. Then come the heavens, then the basic elements, and finally all the terrestrial life like plants and animals, all formed from these building blocks. Everything has its place in this grand logical structure.
Okay, so now let's zoom in. From the vast cosmic scale, right down to its most complicated, most fascinating inhabitant, us. How did John of Damascus see the human being? And more specifically, what did he think about the human soul?
He's very precise here. The soul is living. It's simple, meaning you can't break it down into smaller pieces. And it's incorporeal, not a physical thing. But here's the absolute kicker. The single most important feature that defines its entire nature, its freedom of will, its capacity to make a choice.
He kind of saw the soul as having these different departments, you could say. You've got the rational part, the intellect, which is meant to be the governor, the one in charge. It rules over the irrational parts that can listen to it, like our desires and our anger. And then there are the irrational parts that are totally on autopilot. The vital functions like your heartbeat, breathing, growth. Reason has no say over them. They just operate by nature.
And this right here, this distinction, is what separates us from every other creature. An animal is guided by its nature. It feels an impulse and it acts. Simple. But a human, because we're rational, can guide our nature. We have the power to look at an appetite and decide, am I going to act on this? This is exactly why we can be praised for doing good or blamed for doing wrong. It's the source of all our dignity and all our trouble.
So this raises a huge question, right? Why would God give us this risky freedom? I mean, look at the mess we can make with it. For John, the answer was crystal clear. Virtue that's forced isn't really virtue at all. True goodness, real love, it has to be chosen freely. God didn't want a universe of robots. He wanted beings who could freely choose to turn towards the good.
So we have the perfect architect on one hand and a flawed but free creation on the other. How do you connect them? This brings us to the final piece of John's incredible architecture, the keystone that holds the entire structure together.
Here's the tension at the very heart of the system. On one side, you have an uncreated, unchanging, perfect God. On the other side, you have us, created, always changing, totally fallible human beings. There's a massive, massive gap there. So how do you possibly bridge it without compromising either side?
The solution in John's system is the person of Christ, who embodies two complete and totally distinct natures at the same time. One is fully divine, uncreated, infinite, and unable to suffer. The other is fully human, created, finite, and able to experience everything we do, from joy to pain to death.
It's a fancy theological term, I know, the hypostatic union. But the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It's not about blending or mushing the two natures together into some new third thing. Instead, think of it like this. Divinity and humanity are perfectly joined in one single person, one underlying reality or hypostasis. This is what allows God to fully enter the human condition, bridging that gap from the inside without either nature being weakened or destroyed. Two natures, one person.
And this all leads to probably the most profound, powerful conclusion of his entire system. Why was all this necessary? For John, it all came down to one word: healing. For humanity to be fully healed, every single part of what it means to be human had to be assumed, taken on by God. He had to take on not just a human body, but a human mind, a human will, a human soul, to redeem every single aspect of our nature that had been broken.
So what we have in John of Damascus is this incredible, meticulous universe built on reason, freedom, and a cosmos that has purpose. Today, in an age that often separates science and faith, that questions if we even have free will, his attempt to build one single cohesive system leaves us with a challenge. It kind of forces us to ask, what are the blueprints of our own worldviews? And how well do all the pieces really fit together?